Event Freelancers, welcome to your new community, connecting you to your next project. Get connected. Sign up now. It's free.
Obviously, Caroline, you and I were talking yesterday about what we'd be discussing today. And I think, we both agree what we want to hear is from our audience. So you'll see a Q&A box here on the right. So if you do have a question for Caroline or I about freelancers and what the industry is doing to kind of accommodate them more into the framework, then please do pop them in there and we'll try to address them as we go throughout the session. I think, Caroline, maybe if I could start, with a quick question to you, because I know that you did a lot of work on the so-called SIC codes. We hear a lot about those, the standardized industrial classification SIC codes. In order for us to develop some sort of framework for freelancers, we need to actually understand the concept of what the events industry actually is. In your view, do you actually think there is an events industry through the eyes of government?
That's an interesting question, given through the eyes of government, because there are, as you said, some official areas like the industry codes where data is actually collected. For freelancers out there working within the industry, they might say, well, what relevance is that? But certainly during this pandemic, we've identified in the UK that we do need some official data and recognition, and so we need to work on that side of it. But in practice, it is just those people, businesses that actually come together to create those experiences that is the event industry. And in the past, it's been very powerful. People are very passionate about it. But when we want some of this sort of recognition from government through this lockdown period, it's highlighted some of those weaknesses where we still need to work. And Business Vis Events Partnership, part of the governance that we've been working with the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport is to say that we want that recognition. So SIC code and the occupational codes are one way of doing that.
Yeah, because that's the tricky part, isn't it? I mean, we can say that there's an events industry until we're blue in the face, but really the Treasury and the Office for National Statistics, they're only going to be looking, frankly, at what is there in front of them in black and white data. So if a company does dabble in events, but they're registered as an entertainment company, then the events industry isn't going to get mentioned at all in that purview, is it?
No, it's not. And the same with venues. And actually, if you look at a number of companies on what they've actually registered, there's a lot of others. So that might be one way internally that we could do something about it, is to say, look, there are these existing codes. There's a couple that have got exhibitions and conferences in there. And if we use those codes across the industry, then we might get more data. I mean, we work closely with the creative industries, and they do have recognised industries. So again, it's getting recognised as on that list. So we've done some research in the past that looked at the creative nature of the events industry, very creative, but we need to get that recognition. So that's another way. So there's a number of areas that we're working on doing that. So what about you? What do you think about the events industry?
Well, what do I think? You don't want to know what I completely think. But no, I think particularly for freelancers, I mean, this is just a gut instinct for me, but I do get the impression that perhaps they feel like they're at the back of the queue. So I think that the event businesses, the organizations that would employ these freelancers are struggling to get recognition from the government. So freelancers aren't going to get recognition themselves in the event sphere until the companies do, until those SIC codes are sorted out. There is a kind of a chain, I suppose. I mean, that's sort of my view on it. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I do. And it's difficult to understand the complex nature of that ecosystem that we've heard about today. It's really important because we all live off each other and we rely on each other. And so it is that that recognition. But of course, from a freelancer perspective, you are valued in other ways, and the industry codes might not be something of relevance to you, but it does. We know it matters in terms of those official statistics. So that's something that Business with Events Partnership can work on trying to do on their behalf.
Yeah, I mean, what I sometimes find difficult to articulate, I suppose, is to actually try to articulate where do freelancers actually fit into this events ecosystem. What do they actually contribute? I mean, I guess that's quite a broad terminology, really, because the nature of our industry is so, I'm going to use the word fragmented, but it's very difficult to articulate just how important freelancers are.
Yeah, I mean, from an academic perspective, we talk about the two things that the events industry, the people side is key. One is butterflying. You flip from one job to the other. Freelancers do that. The other one is that pulsating. So as you get closer to events, the organisations get bigger because of the subcontractors and the freelancers. And for me, the freelancers are that beating heartbeat of the events industry. They keep us going. If you want metaphors, they are the pieces of the jigsaw. They are the cogs in the motor that keeps the engine moving forward. So that's why at this time it's disappointing to see that some freelancers have sort of fallen through the cracks, that some, I suppose I would say, bad practices where their clients haven't actually worried so much about them as their own full-time staff. And so it's heartening today to hear people talking about that the relationship with freelancers is as important or as full-time members of staff, and will become more important. Someone earlier was talking about the Australian terms of permalancer. That's an interesting compromise in terms of having permanent. I think in practice that's what happens. You do tend to have the permanent freelancers that you use, but again, that could be challenged in terms of moving forward, in terms of diversity and inclusion. It shouldn't always just be about who you know and who your network is. I know that is the practice, but we also need at this time to open up opportunities for other people to either join the industry or certainly join our team if we're organising events.
Yeah. I think, the industry, again, I'm going to use the word fragmented. Forgive me, that word gets used a lot now. But we are kind of a bit all over the place when it comes to the associations. The other day we held our Get Britain meeting event, and we had representatives from pretty much all the associations there. And it's so big almost. It's almost unmanageable. So I'm going to throw you a question that I know we spoke about before, and I'm interested to hear what you've got to say. But what or who, in your view, needs to change to meet the needs of freelancers in our ecosystem? Because it is such a big platform.
Yeah, it is. And if you are a sole trader or freelancer, you can feel quite isolated, I should think. And there are some networks. I mean, it's interesting to look at, our Host Today Connected is an interesting concept to bring freelancers of different types of work together and with potential clients with the agencies. But because freelancers are used through venues, production companies, all over, you said that it feels really fragmented and it seems huge. So I think and you've said in the past that what this pandemic has shown us is the strength of our trade and professional bodies, who in the past may not have been relevant. So there are those that are partners through BVP that are sort of individual rather than business associations that are there to support the freelancers, whether it's the PSA or whether it's APCO. And that's the trouble. We use lots of acronyms and I think, well, who are they? So if you are thinking, well, who might represent my interests, then you go to Business with Events Partnership website, the partners are there. But because that's the I suppose the bigger part of the picture, whereas actually on a day-to-day basis, people have turned to networks. And I noticed some of the comments today, it's sort of, well, who are my potential clients? How do I get work? How do I take my skills and use them elsewhere.
So question number 1 here, which has got 9 votes. It says, is there a fear that full-timers recently made redundant will be entering the freelance market and that agencies may prioritise booking their former employees over existing or pre-COVID freelancers? And I think this is a massive issue that needs to rightly be addressed. It is perfectly reasonable, I think, that a company will be who needs freelance resource will be looking to probably use what they have already. It's all about the knowledge base they already have. My main concern is that a lot of the freelancers, particularly those who have started recently, are going to be forced out. I think that's a fair assessment of where we are. They are going to be pushed back because they might not be as well known to that agency. So it is going to be very important for all freelancers to build their profile and be active on LinkedIn. If you haven't started your own website to advertise your own services, then I suggest maybe you can do that. They are usually free services and so on. But I do think that it's going to be a big issue. And I think maybe they're going to be oversupply insofar that there'll be so many freelancers looking for work. Now, we are seeing a lot of events that were hoping to happen in Q3 and Q4 now start to cancel. Maybe that will cause its own problems. I don't know. But if there is a glut towards the end of the year, we've got the start date, the 1st of October, which is great. To get these events turned around in time, maybe more freelancers are going to be used. I'm not quite sure. It's going to be a very, very interesting few months ahead, but it is very possible that freelancers or former employees with full-time knowledge experience of that particular company are going to get priority. So it's up to everyone else to make sure that they really push ahead the best they can to get themselves out there. Be active on LinkedIn. That really matters too. We've done a lot of stuff at Mash Media as well over the last few months. We ran Classified totally for free, which showed off all the freelancers who are out. How has the Beeweb actually kind of changed itself to recognize freelancers officially?
We could perhaps do more, but I think it is encouraging the partners to recognize the freelance community and to have that contact and network with people. So those that deal with individual memberships, it's more straightforward than those that deal with businesses and organisations and venues who would encourage that. I mean, the Events Industry Board had a talent task force where we looked at the skills and competitiveness going forward, and part of the issue there was identifying that there are freelancers and they are different category in terms of contracts and pay that we need to consider. And the pandemic has heightened that issue around they're slipping through the net in terms of financial support. So certainly it's raised the profile that we do need to take that consideration. And we've been campaigning with government along with others to actually recognise them going forward.
There's an audience question that's come in that I'm going to ask, and I think it's relevant to what you've just said. It's got 9 votes. It reads, does the industry have any kind of charter or regulations to protect freelancers or manage the relationship between client agencies and freelancers? Now, I think I know it doesn't, but is that something you think BVEP and the EIB should be working towards?
Yeah, a lot of our partners do. In terms of being membership, you sign up to a charter to be a member of the trade body, and you have to behave in that way. And so if a client isn't, then if they are a member of that association, they can be reprimanded and told to change their ways or to leave that body. So it is there, but I've noticed that on some of the Facebook chat groups, that's been an issue through the pandemic, is the way that some people are being treated. So going forward, that's something that needs to be highlighted and identified, that improvements that can actually be made. So that's something we can take back to the partners to say, look, could you look at your codes of conduct and check that the freelancers are very clear? Because freelance, I think we've been lumped into sort of contractors and contractual arrangements.
Yeah.
So yeah, good point.
Do you think And I think I touched on this with my Tony Bennett monologue while you were away. But this whole episode, I think that there's two possible outcomes here. I think the question I answered a few moments ago kind of suggested, will businesses look towards their formerly redundant employees for freelance work, pushing the traditional freelancers further back in the queue? But I'm curious, do you think actually the traditional freelancer will actually be put off by this whole episode and think that, well, during COVID-19, I didn't get any help and it's, meant I had to go on universal credit, and they'll just go and leave our industry and go and find full-time work elsewhere? Do you think that's a risk?
I think it's a risk that we may have lost some people because they've seen how transferable their skills are to other industries. But I think because people who have been furloughed or who have been made redundant have actually had time to reflect and say, actually, I'm really skilled in this area. I have a lot of knowledge and expertise. I will go out on my own. So I think we'll see a growth in the number of freelancers. And of course, there will be a reduction in the size of the company. So, and as we've heard today, a reliance on freelancers going forward. So I think that sort of the ecosystem, the equilibrium will actually work out for itself. It's tough. So today, days like today, where there's a lot of advice and support for freelancers, there's a number of people who are starting up on their own can get the support from this network. So I think it will be positive rather than negative.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, that sort of then brings us on to this, the idea of the agency model as it stands. A lot of particularly boutique agencies, they rely on the freelance model because obviously it's lower overheads. They've got less, fewer people on full-time staff, and they bring them in for the big jobs. I wonder if supply is so reduced, how's that going to actually impact the agency model?
As I said, I think there will be an equilibrium. I think that if there is demand out there, the supply will actually go to meet it. People will see the gaps in the market, will see that opportunity and work with it. But it is platforms to enable that to happen. So I think, again, the pandemic has moved a lot online and it's moved it global. So I think that people are now seeing bigger networks than they have experienced in the past, so that they will actually do that and perhaps think outside of the borders, like in just the UK, but actually I can use those skills in the Middle East or Australia, New Zealand. Not being able to physically fly at the moment is an issue, but they can certainly sell their advice and work on local events. So I think that the supply will still be there for agencies and venues.
User comments coming in from our audience, so I'd like to kind of go through some of those. I'm going to bombard you, but please by all means throw some back at me. So we've got one here which has been upvoted. Now I'm going to say I have no idea here. It's from Brandon, and it says, what could we do to make it easier to work abroad as a freelancer visa wise? It seems that the government needs to adjust to the concept of freelancers still. I guess that touches on what you just mentioned, that take these freelance skills out to other nations.
Yeah, and that's I suppose the scary part of it is understanding. It's bad enough understanding your own home country without having to understand others, which is where, again, the network would really help to say, well, what are the rules and regulations around working in another country? Despite the pandemic, it's going to be the legal ones. And certainly before the pandemic, the issues that were facing us, we were trying to deal with was Brexit, because we've still got Brexit. And so that whole issue of physically moving across borders means that a lot more perhaps will be done online rather than overseas. So yeah, you do need to learn what the regulations are, and local people will help you with that process.
That's great. Now, another question, this is definitely with your Beeweb hat on here. It doesn't say who it's come from, but it says the broadcast industry has a union, much like many other industry sectors. Where does the events industry get its regulatory advice from, I guess,
it's interesting because, as I said, I think when I got cut off with musicians union of fighting really heavily for for support and for the pay, and the event industry doesn't. It does in certain areas. So the PSA on the production side, there's little pockets of unionisation, whether it's the music industry or whether it's production side, and others there isn't. So, and we are in the UK in a free market economy. So that's where, again, trade and professional bodies come in, because they are a collective, not a union, but they are a collective, and create their own sort of structures and regulations. But that's, again, the role of business with events partnerships, to feed back through the events industry board what regulations there are needed, on which regulations are in the way of the UK competitiveness. So if people do know of any that are needed and or need to be get rid of, then it's worth getting in contact.
And that sort of leads me on to another question that's been asked by Julia Culver. And again, obviously your experience in the university side is going to be relevant here. But do you think universities can play a bigger supporting role to help event freelancers?
Yeah, I think so, Julia. I think a lot of courses don't necessarily recognise that freelance route, and I think now, again, with the permanent jobs and internships being under threat, that freelance is going to be an option. And I've known students and graduates who are freelancers, but they're very clear about what their skills and expertise is. And again, so we need to look at the human resource modules and the legal modules, etc., that actually do cover that sort of support that we've seen from insurance companies and accountants today. So I think that we need to make sure it's part of the portfolio of the courses that are on offer, that it's explicit within those, that the freelance is an optional route.
And we've got another question, which I think is along a very similar line. It asks, how could an event freelancer be part of an academic course so they can share their diverse experience and skills? I don't know if that's perhaps alluding to perhaps they could come in and speak, but I guess maybe what skills can a freelancer pass on?
Yeah, it's this. I mean, there's a traditional route with, say, it's a university course, which is 3-4 years, or postgraduate is they have a lot of guest lectures, they have a lot of live projects, they have a lot of graduates that are part of the package. It's very difficult to move from freelancing to become a lecturer. In the UK, a lot of the universities require a PhD, so do look at research, and there's a lot of what we call pracademics, which are there's a lot of people in higher education who were practitioners, who are academics and still have their feet in both camps, who really have that. And so, yeah, just knock on the door of your local college, university, and say, look, this is who I am, this is my experience. But think of it as two ways, not you coming in to tell them, it's also a way of learning. Universities are about knowledge creation, about research, so what can you learn from them as well? It's a two-way relationship that's really important. So yeah, they might be going on holiday now, having spent all their time pivoting, but do get in touch with them. That'd be really good.
Yeah, if you're going on holiday, check your batteries all right before you go. Take it from me. Right, there's one here. I think I'll field this one. Natalie asks, how would you suggest new freelancers maximize LinkedIn to get themselves out there? That's a really good point. Absolutely advertise yourself through thought leadership. That's the best way to describe it. On LinkedIn, you're able to effectively write blog posts. And I think it's a great idea for freelancers to kind of take that responsibility and actually share their experiences. LinkedIn is a great platform for connecting, not just with like-minded fellow freelancers. You don't want to be shouting into an echo chamber, but you can reach out to multiple businesses as well. So write a post, talk about your experience, the challenges that you met. What was an event brief? What challenges were presented to you? How did you overcome them? What was the event solution and the execution? And if you can get a testimonial from any former clients of yours or people you've worked for, all the better. But blog posting on LinkedIn is a great way to start really putting yourself out there. Go further as well. You can set up your own website and link to that. But it's also important as well that you go around sharing relevant stories and other bits of information that's relevant to the industry. You know, I'm not going to tell you to just go sharing conference news stuff. There's other magazines, other titles out there as well. But it's important that you keep abreast of what's going on in the industry. And LinkedIn is an absolutely vital tool to do that. We've literally got about 55 seconds left, Caroline, before they wave the checkered flag for us. Is there any parting comments you'd like to pass on to the audience?
I would just say, just know that you are part of a bigger story and a bigger picture, and to make the chance to realize that and go out and make those contacts and networks, and think globally. We are a global industry.
That we are. Oh, well, I was going to say that the events industry has been through a very bumpy ride, but there is only one way now, and that is forward. We are going to need to stick together. And for each individual freelancer, you've got to make sure that you stay in touch with everyone you've worked with before and expand your network. So with 10 seconds to go, I'd like to say thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed the session. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Martin.
Event Freelancers, welcome to your new community, connecting you to your next project. Get connected. Sign up now. It's free.